Hey, it's Dan here. Welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, a Friday edition of the podcast. It's me, Kay Cabot, and Ashley Bastock. We're going to hit on the Deshaun Watson restructure today. We're going to talk about some of the Browns' quarterback options, including should they go after Malik Willis when free agency starts next week? And then we get into some of the visits they've had here early in the draft process, including Ty Simpson, a very interesting early visit for the Browns as the draft process gets going. That's all coming up on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Before we get to it, hey, listen, I tell you this at the end of every pod, but please find us on socials. It doesn't, if it's TikTok, if it's Instagram, if it's Twitter, if it's Threads, we're on Threads, folks. If it's Facebook, go look for Orange and Brown Talk and give us a follow, and especially that TikTok account. Make sure you choose the right one because I kind of messed up. There's a second one out there. Just pick the one where there's a bunch of videos posted. It's orange.and.brown. I would appreciate that follow on TikTok. Okay, here we go. A Friday edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe with Kay Cabot and Ashley Bastock. Recording this, it's about 1:20 on Friday, and this is one of those times of year where it's important to just note when we're recording this as we get into that weekend before free agency, which can be an active weekend in the NFL. The Browns have been active before, going all the way back to the Jarvis Landry trade, the Jerry Jeudy trade, all of that stuff. So, just noting when we're recording this and when you're listening to this. So free agency right around the corner. The tampering window opens on Monday. The league year starts on Wednesday. So we're going to get into the first thing the Browns needed to do to kind of set up their free agency, and that is the restructuring of Deshaun Watson's contract. It's become an annual, it's like a sign of spring. It's like pitchers and catchers reporting and all of that. Mary Kay, the Deshaun Watson contract gets restructured. We are getting closer to a point where the Browns will be able to move on from him. It seems likely that that's going to be next offseason, probably as a post-June 1st cut. This is, again, just a procedural move. But why does this matter for the Cleveland Browns to get this done right now?
Well, it's important right now for a couple of reasons. First of all, they have to be cap compliant by the time the league year opens at 4:00 on Wednesday, March 11th. So that's one of the things that needs to happen. And in order for them to do that, they had to get about $17 million under the cap. They were over it by about that amount. Now, what happens with this particular restructuring is Deshaun Watson's base salary for this year was going to be $46 million. And you can take that all the way down to the veteran minimum, which for a 7+ year veteran is $1.255 million that you have to pay them. So you subtract that from the $46 million, and they can give him a bonus if they go that far. They can give him a bonus of, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but $44 some million. So the restructure bonus would be, $44.745 million, takes the base down to $1.255 million, which they've done with him in the past. And then it saves them about $36 million on the cap. So not only does it wipe out that $17 million over the cap charge that they had, but it then creates another $19 or so million right now that they can go out and spend in free agency or to acquire a player in a trade and have room for whatever his contract is or whatever his extension is going to be. So these are the important reasons to do this. And in the case of Deshaun, he's going to get that money anyways. It's a fully guaranteed contract. So it's really just a matter of when with him and not if. And there's really no downside at all to redoing his contract. And it was already baked into the plan when they first signed him to this blockbuster 5-year deal worth $230 million. Now, the corollary to this is the next guy that this is going to happen to is Denzel Ward. I don't expect it to happen today as we're taping this on Friday afternoon, but he has a cap charge of, I think it's, $32.8 million cap charge for this year. That's a lot of money, especially for a non-quarterback, especially for a cornerback. So they will do the same thing with him, take that down to the studs basically, and give him the veteran minimum, I would guess, of $1.255 million for him as well. And his base salary this year is $16.9 million. So you are giving him a bonus of, I wrote it down here somewhere, a bonus of, $15 million or something like that. So yeah, $15.6 million for a bonus for him, a restructure bonus, and that saves you, some millions on the cap as well. And I don't think there are too many guys that are in this category, but if you just do these two guys, that should give you what you need to do the business that you want to do. And there will be some other guys, kind of coming off the books as well. So, they should be in decent shape, and they should be able to add some free agents and make some trades starting as soon as, they could do more things today even.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I remember when Josh Allen signed his deal, and even going back to when Patrick Mahomes initially signed that huge 10-year, was it $500 million, something like that, that gigantic deal that he signed. The thinking with these big quarterback deals is eventually you're going to reach in and you're going to restructure and you're going to use them to free up cap space. And that's just going to happen every year. Of course, the issue with Deshaun Watson is, when you're doing that with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, you're getting Super Bowl level quarterback play. The Browns have barely gotten a full season out of Deshaun Watson. So that's where this hurts. You're still kind of getting hit with those cap numbers. Even if you're lowering them, you're still getting hit with sizable cap numbers and just not getting performance. But that said, Ashley, this is what they signed up for. This is what they've had to deal with. And here we are. We're to a point now where, a year from now, we're probably talking about him as a post June 1st cut. And he'll still be on the books for a few years after that. But again, this is all just about reducing those cap charges and just being able to function and being able to have a football team that you think you can at least go out there and be competitive with while you're navigating this just gigantic albatross of a contract.
Yeah, we were talking before we hit record, and I mentioned I've had friends and family texting me, and this happens every year, and asking, well, why are they doing this? Like, Deshaun Watson hasn't been good. And it's like, well, they quite literally can't afford not to do this. This is largely, as Mary Kay laid out, all the reasons for doing this, the money it frees up. It's a bookkeeping move, essentially, because he's getting that money regardless. Like, it doesn't matter to anyone. And really, it's a result of having some cash on hand via your owners, who are willing to help you restructure in this way to free up the cap space so that you can operate. Like, if they didn't do this, they wouldn't be able to operate. And it also just is interesting, though, in the future, after this year, because I'm sure everyone remembers this. Like, when they first signed Deshaun Watson, Andrew Berry would always say, we're not thinking about this in 5 years. We're thinking about this in 10-year terms. And can you really say that today? Obviously, the answer is no, just given how it's worked out, given his injuries. It's not been, I think, what they expected in that regard. So, when people praise Andrew Berry and his handling of the cap, this is one of the more gimme sorts of moves he has to deal with. To me, the real work on this is going to be in the years to come for him.
Yeah, and also just to explain, I know that I see some people bring this up, and it happened when Wyatt Teller said his goodbye. I got some emails from people. I'm like, wait, he's a free agent. Why is he gonna be waived? Essentially, there's void years tacked onto some of these deals, and that's the case with a Wyatt Teller. That's the case with a David Njoku. So we're probably gonna see next week the Browns are actually probably, whether they announce it or not, the Browns are actually going to waive those guys with post June 1st designations. They're essentially waiving the void years, even though they're free agents. And that allows them to save more money on the cap with those void years. It's all really complicated, Mary Kay, but this is a model we're seeing more and more in the NFL. I mean, the Eagles and Howie Roseman have really made it famous. And the thing that stings with the Browns is, right, the Eagles do this and it results in a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl appearance and a Super Bowl victory. The Browns, unfortunately, didn't get that. That's what they thought they were going to be able to do when they traded for Deshaun Watson. But obviously, that never came to fruition.
No, it didn't. But this is the model. This is what people are doing now. And you look around the league and everybody has these big, enormous quarterback contract. So the Browns are not alone in this at all. In fact, it wasn't long after Deshaun Watson signed his contract that he started to trickle down the leaderboard in terms of quarterback salaries. And now the salaries are up to, $55 million and more. So, he's not even one of the top paid quarterbacks anymore. And you see other teams having to eat enormous salaries. The Denver Broncos had to do it with Russell Wilson. The Arizona Cardinals are about to do it with Kyler Murray. They're going to have to eat $36 million of his contract. And because he has offset language in his contract, it's not like a team can go out and, bid for, $20 million for him next year because, it just comes off what the Cardinals would have to pay him. So he's not going to get any more money. So a team is going to get him for $1.255 million. And it's the same thing with Geno Smith. So this is some of the caponomics that goes on. And I hope that we're explaining it in a way that is not too overly complicated and, kind of easy to understand. But there are so many teams that are in this same boat now with these big contracts, but it's just the wave of the present and the future. This is what the quarterbacks are making. This is what the market is bearing. And if it doesn't work out, then you're left holding the bag. Now, fortunately for these teams, the cap continues to climb and climb. And this year it has eclipsed $300 million for the very first time. It's just over $300 million. It went up by $22 million. And in the final analysis, when the Browns are ready to do business, I think they're going to end up with about $45 million or something like that, that they can use to sign their own free agents and look externally to try to add some guys from the outside. And as I wrote from the Combine, their number one priority internally is linebacker Devin Bush. They want to get that done. I don't know if it will get done before he hits the market. The goal is to get it done before he hits the market. We'll see how that goes. Drew Rosenhaus is his agent, and he's obviously going to drive a hard bargain. He's a really good agent, and he will maximize Devin Bush's earning potential in this regard. But he also has a good relationship with the Browns. They work very, very well with Drew Rosenhaus. He's always got a lot of Browns clients, and they know how to do business with each other. So I expect them to get that done. I think that they will also try to re-sign guard Tevin Jenkins, who did some platooning with Wyatt Teller at the end of last year. And then also Corey Bojorquez, their excellent punter. So these are some of the guys that they will work on re-signing. And then there are guys on the outside that they will take a look at as well.
And also that rising salary cap thing. And look, we could spend hours and hours talking to the salary cap. I don't think people want this to turn into a math podcast. But when you mention that rising salary cap, that's part of this to consider too. Because I did just look it up. In 2022, the salary cap was $208.2 million. And now it's over $300 million. And so like $50 million, if we just picked that generic number, $50 million in 2022, that squeezes your cap a lot tighter than $50 million does, this year. And then down the road, when it, let's say it gets to $350 million in the next 3 or 4 years. That's what a lot of these teams are banking on too, Ashley. It's just this idea that this cap is going to keep going up. And so some of these numbers that are eating up 20% of your cap this year, that same number is going to eat up, I don't know, 10, I'm not a math guy, 10, 15% of your cap in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, even back to when they traded for Deshaun Watson back in 2022, we were sort of hypothesizing this then. Like Andrew Berry and this front office, it just feels like likes to get ahead of the curve in so many ways and play the long game. And you've seen it on a micro level. Like I always think about them extending Denzel Ward the offseason. They did that, and it was right before there was this big jump in the cornerback market, or even like extending Jerry Jeudy before he played. That move ultimately probably saved them some money. even though I guess we'll see how that ultimately shakes out and if Jerry rebounds here next year. But I do think in signing Deshaun Watson, like we talked about that again, even like 4 years ago, yes, the deal was unprecedented at the time, but that it was going to become one of those things where you are starting to see like those numbers be the sort of standard and all these teams kind of have the same workaround to it. So ultimately they were ahead in that way. But again, I think it goes back to this larger point of, well, when other teams have done it, it's gotten them more success. So they haven't. So it's going to be in the later part of the life cycle of the cap hits for this deal, how they're going to navigate that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it comes with this idea that you had a guy that you got like 19 games out of, and that's what kills you in the end. Because to your point, Ashley, like extend early. Ask the Cincinnati Bengals about this. Extend, guys. Be the first to extend. Don't wait. And then the next time around, yeah, you'll have to reset the market again, but you want to be ahead of it when you extend guys. So that's something they've done well. Even with Myles Garrett's contract last year, that got beat pretty quickly, and that's just the cycle of things. So, Mary Kay, let's get into some other news that has happened. Let's stick with today in the quarterback position. Geno Smith is going to be released. So there's another guy who's going to be on the market. Similar situation to Kyler Murray, where if you sign him, it's going to be for the veteran minimum. So that would be a cheap option. We've talked about Kyler Murray. He's going to be available. Of course, we know the really big fish out there is Malik Willis. Don't know if the Browns would actually put them, if they're going to throw their hat in the ring there or not. I know you've said it seems unlikely that he would at least come here, but we'll see if they end up throwing their hat in the ring there. As the dominoes kind of start to fall here and some of these veteran quarterbacks become available, and we spent a lot of time talking about Geno Smith last year. If you think his struggles last year were because of the Raiders and not him, maybe that's a guy worth taking a chance on. I don't know. He's not that super mobile guy that Todd Monken likes, but he is a veteran quarterback who's played well in recent years, at least. So has anything changed in your mind about where this team might go quarterback wise?
No, not really, because I think I've been writing and saying, at least I hope I've been writing it. I know I've been saying it, that I don't think that they are going to look for or add an older veteran quarterback. If they add a quarterback, it will be a younger guy that has upside potential and they can maybe sign him to an extension and keep him around for a few years. I really don't see the Geno Smiths or the Kirk Cousins as viable options for the Cleveland Browns right now. Not feeling it. I would be surprised if that happens. If anything at this point, I'm starting to think that, and I texted this to our subscribers today. I think I did anyways. I thought to do it. And that is, I think that they will march forward with Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders and maybe add another developmental quarterback in this draft. Or even in free agency. Maybe you pick up a young guy somewhere along the line that you can add to that room that can start if you need him to in a pinch, challenge for a backup job or whatever. And in that scenario, I think they would try to trade Dillon Gabriel. Now, will anybody give you anything for Dillon Gabriel? Maybe not, but if you could get a late round pick even out a year or two, or a conditional pick out a year or two, then I think that they would be willing to do something like that. Because if you think that you have seen enough that you don't see him as a viable option for you as a starter, maybe it's time to move on and see if you can get something out of that. It was a third round pick. That's pretty significant. And if they can at least get something in return, I think that they would really like to do that. So we'll see how that goes. If it doesn't work out, I think they see him as someone worth continuing to develop and seeing where that goes for him. And maybe down the road, you can get something for him or whatever. But right now, I'm just not feeling the older veteran quarterback. I would think that they would add a younger guy with upside potential.
And I still if it were me, and I don't know that they're going to do this, I would get really aggressive. And Mary Kay, I think this is a guy you liked in the draft. You probably would agree with me. I would get aggressive and go after Malik Willis. I would make him say no to something, because the more I look at it is, okay, yeah, maybe Miami's an option, but they're sort of going into this weird sort of rebuild mode. We talked about some quarterbacks that teams might have to eat a bunch of dead money on. Tua could be in that category here soon. Um, Arizona is another team that's been floated out there. And again, they're a team that's going through a lot of change and a lot of upheaval. They've got a few guys on offense, but I don't know. I would throw a deal in front of Malik Willis and make him just see if you could entice him to come here. I think that might be your best path forward at quarterback. Kyler Murray's interesting, but I think there's a lot that comes with that. Again, Geno, older guy. I just don't know what you're trying to get done in that situation. That would be my move. I don't know if they're going to do that, Ashley, or not, but I would certainly entertain the idea of let's be bold here. Let's go see if we can be the team that goes and gets this guy and sees what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, just in the sense of if you think Malik Willis is that good, and if you think Malik Willis has potentially the ability to be like a Sam Darnold or be like a Daniel Jones, and hey, it's a guy people had kind of written off, and now he's developed a little bit, has more experience. If you think he's going to be that good, then that could potentially be a long-term solution for some team at that position. So why not be you? Now, I guess if they don't feel that strongly about him or don't think he's that guy, then you can't make that move just for the sake of making it. But there are these guys that pop up every year, and maybe it'll be someone else that's not Malik Willis. But I think if there's any thought that he could be that guy, it's why wouldn't you try? But I don't know. It's interesting. I'd be curious to hear their straight, honest thoughts about him. And especially if they don't even make really a concerted effort to do it. But I'm with you. I mean, I would be aggressive. I think I got asked the other day on the radio if money wasn't a factor, who would be the best option. And to me, it would be him. I think for any team searching for a quarterback right now, it would be him. And it just kind of, once again, illustrates that these guys don't become available on the open market all that often.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Mary Kay, obviously I see the reasons why it couldn't work, right? It's the small sample size stuff. But that said, based on the discussion we just had, I mean, you gave $230 million guaranteed to a quarterback that you essentially got nothing out of, right? He never even threw a pass in a playoff game for you. So I don't know. Would it be so bad to say to Malik Willis and his agents, hey, here's 3 years, 100 and I think Darnold got 102. So let's say 3 years and $110 million. And, two of those, it would probably more be like a 2-year deal, right? That's how these 3-year deals usually are. Usually after the second year, you can kind of get out of it a little easier. I don't know. I just think that's one of those things that is a risk worth taking if you're the Cleveland Browns and you're facing this specter of Deshaun Watson versus Shedeur Sanders, which again, maybe Shedeur Sanders could end up being really good with a bunch of weapons around him, but I don't know if you want to necessarily stake everything to that.
Well, you know that I would do that
Yes.
with Malik Willis. I would absolutely toss my hat into the ring for Malik Willis. I would be kicking the tires. I would be making some kind of an offer. I would do that. I have felt that way since he was coming out in the 2022 draft, and I wrote a column to that effect back then, just based on a lot of due diligence, actually. I did a lot of work on him back then. I didn't just pull that out of thin air. It involves talking to people. It involves watching some highlights and some film. It involves talking to people that have worked with him. It involves observing him at the Senior Bowl, interacting with teammates there, talking to coaches and GMs and people like that. So I came to the conclusion that I thought that he was somebody worth drafting and building around. And then I came to find out, which I didn't even know it until just this year, that if they hadn't traded for Deshaun Watson, they would have drafted Malik Willis in 2022. Finally, they were going to listen to me about something. But no, they absolutely would have done that. And I think that's significant because one thing that we know about Andrew, and we say it all the time, when he has his sights set on someone, he usually does not give up on that until it just becomes impossible to get that person. And so, in a perfect world right now, I think he would be pursuing Malik Willis, but because of the economics of the whole situation, not sure they'll go ahead and do that. I think the price might climb a little too high for a player. In their mind, it might be a little rich for their taste right now for a player who's only played in or started 6 games or something like that. No one knows for sure if Malik Willis is going to be worth that kind of money. So we will soon find out, because I think someone's going to pay it. But I would be going after him if I were them. I just don't know if they are going to do that. I think that they are pretty darn intrigued by Shedeur Sanders, and I think they are very curious to see what Deshaun Watson has left in the tank, and then maybe they bring in one of these younger guys somewhere later in the draft as well. So as I've been saying from the start, I'm not really feeling it, especially because, people are talking about $30 million a year for him. And, you could be holding the bag on that if it doesn't work out the way that you want to. And they can't get themselves into another situation like that with a quarterback that, that isn't starting games for them. So I think they're curious enough to go with what they have and just see where it takes them.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about that a lot. And on Wednesday after the coordinators, I mentioned that, like, I'm not sure why they're talking up Deshaun Watson so much, other than like maybe he really does have a chance to start for this team. But the only other thing I can think of, Ashley, is maybe they're praising these guys just a little too much. And we've seen the MO of this front office before, and obviously it's a new coaching staff, but Travis Hunter was Shohei Ohtani a week before the Browns traded out of the number 2 pick. So I just don't know.
Yeah, we have seen them play this game before. I think Andrew Berry is fairly good at it. Like, to me, it's one of those things that when he's done that in the past, like the Travis Hunter thing being the prime example, like it becomes really clear in hindsight what he was trying. So impossible to know, but I don't know. I think it also kind of comes back to this idea of their options are going to be limited. So I kind of waffle back and forth between those two worlds. Their options are limited in terms of how they can add, in terms of what they can add, just across the board. Who's going to be available? The assets you're willing to give up, your cap situation, the weaker quarterback draft class. So if you also are trying to sell, I don't know, other players, a fan base on reasons to still pay attention to this team and not think you're talking about another 4 or 5 win season, then that also makes sense to me in terms of the messaging that we're getting from them right now. So I can see the value in it that way too.
All right, another big thing to get to. 30 visits have started for the Browns, starting early this year. So Jordan Tyson attended the Cavs game the other night, visited the Browns the next day, and then on Thursday, it was Carnell Tate, and this is, of course, the one that got a bunch of attention, Ty Simpson. Mary Kay, there has been a lot of, coming out of the combine. Of course, Todd Monken talked about his relationship with Ty Simpson's dad. You tracked down Ty Simpson after his availability and got a little more from him on that relationship and how he knows Todd Monken. It all just makes this very interesting. Ty Simpson has essentially separated himself, it feels like at this point, as the number 2 quarterback in this draft. But similar to the guy we just talked about, obviously it's not going to be as expensive, but Malik Willis, Ty Simpson is a guy that did not start a lot of games at Alabama. That has generally been a red flag that has held true for most quarterbacks, that if they just don't start many college games, it doesn't translate well to the NFL. Now, his situation's a little different. He could have left Alabama. He actually could have gone back to school and made a ton of money this year, transferring someplace else. But he could have left Alabama when he lost that job to Jalen Milroe. But he didn't. He stuck it out. So again, a little bit of a unique situation in that, and why he only started 15 games, but still something worth considering in this process. But I guess what was your thought when you saw that Ty Simpson was visiting the Browns this early?
Well, even though I don't think they would pull the trigger on him at number 6 overall, I mean, it could happen. I would probably be very surprised if that happens there. But the reason you do so much diligence on a player like that, number one, maybe you want teams to think you're going to take him at number 6. Because if you're sitting at number 12 or you're sitting at number 14 and you think the Browns are going to take him at number 6 and you really want him, then you might think about trading up to get him. So that's one of the reasons. And then the other reasons are the fact that you also have the number 24 overall pick in the first round, and you have the number 39 pick. And once he starts to turn into perhaps a value pick, and maybe he starts to slide a little bit, maybe he becomes a little bit more interesting and tantalizing to you. So these are some of the reasons why you would do this. Now, I know they like him. I would have a hard time seeing them take him at number 6 overall. I still think that in a perfect world, Andrew will try to trade back from that number 6 overall pick, but that opens up possibilities too. Maybe you trade back to somewhere where it makes sense to take a Ty Simpson. And even if you don't think he's going to come in and start for you this year right away, if you get him at a sort of bargain, then maybe you think that you can develop him for down the road because you like his skill set, and you just bring him in and you let these guys work with him and see where they can take it. So once again, there are numerous reasons to have him in. He's a really, really thoughtful, nice young man. I mean, he's got great measurables. He's got a lot of talent. He did some very, very good things last year. In his first 8 games, he had 20 touchdown passes against only 1 interception. And then he got into a situation where he suffered a horrible bout of gastritis and he lost like 25 pounds. And he faltered a little bit down the stretch. And he was not the quarterback down the stretch that he was in the early going. And he's been able to explain that now. And so if teams can look at that and see why that happened and understand why that happened, and if Jason Simpson, his father, is explaining that to Todd Monken, how that all went down and why that all went down and how it's been solved, then maybe that changes the game for you a little bit. 15 games is not a lot. It's not a recipe for success in the NFL. But once again, if you think he's a guy that you can bring in and coach him up and get him to the point where he becomes a viable, bona fide, quality NFL starter, and you can get him at a good spot in the draft, then of course you would give that some consideration.
And I think too, just looking back to last year's draft, right? We talk about the 24th pick and the 39th pick. And okay, so where did Jackson Dart go? He went 25th. The Giants traded up to take him there at 25th. Where did Tyler Shuck go? He went 40th. So those are sort of, if we're using last year as a template where, again, there was a clear number 1 and then there was a gap, and it was sort of thought of as a weak class with some guys who were flawed. 25 ended up being that spot for the second quarterback, and 40 ended up being that spot for the third quarterback. So, I mean, Ashley, that's right in the wheelhouse if they don't want to take him at 6. And I do think that would be a little crazy to maybe take him at 6 unless you really believe in him. Maybe he does end up going down to 24. Now, I don't know what the Rams are thinking. I don't know what some of these other teams who might be looking for a developmental quarterback are thinking, but you are sort of in that sweet spot where you can maybe not have to reach, maybe not make an extreme choice, and you can still take one of these young quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the thing about the Browns is we just see repeatedly they don't reach even when they have a need at that position. Like, again, we talk about the Shedeur Sanders decision there, and they traded up a handful of spots in the 5th round to get him, but they weren't running to take him in the 2nd round just because he fell out of the 1st, right? I think for them, it really becomes about maximizing value and taking guys where you have them valued, and if not, going in a different direction. So, I mean, I think it's going to come down to that. And I mean, it'll be interesting, the stuff coming out of the combine and whether he will go in the 1st round or not. That'll be interesting. And like I said before, I mean, I still remain curious, like to Mary Kay's point, if we're going to see them ultimately trade back for 6, if they can get some assets that they like and trade back, like that would still make the most sense to me, just given how we know everyone views this quarterback class, how everyone views the potential 2027 quarterback class. That's all, I think, a part of it too.
Okay. Did we miss anything else? Any news here from the last couple days after coordinator day? I feel like we're sitting here on this Friday before free agency recording a pod, and I feel like we're just playing with fire here the longer we go. So I don't think we missed anything. I think we got everything that's kind of. Oh, go ahead, Mary Kay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just wanted to mention that, Carnell Tate would be an interesting
Yes.
choice for them at number 6 overall. And for him to be here in Berea yesterday when Ty Simpson was here, I think that's pretty significant. So they've had in, as we mentioned, Jordan Tyson was here. Again, the day after going to the Cavs game to watch Jalen play and help beat the Pistons that day. And he led the team with 22 points and whatnot. So then they bring in Carnell Tate, and Carnell Tate is widely regarded as the best wide receiver in this draft. Now, his 40 time was not what he hoped it would be, but he's still really, really good. And I'm sure he'll follow along in the tradition of these first round Ohio State receivers who are performing really, really well in the NFL. So I thought that was interesting too. They're taking a good, strong look at him, and I think it's a sign that he's in play at number 6 as well.
Well, and the beauty of being an Ohio State receiver is you get to run your 40 in Columbus too at some point. And that was an infamous 40-yard dash that was only like 39 yards. I don't know if that's still the case, but that used to always be the joke that the 40 in Columbus on those pro days was actually maybe like 39 yards. But I think that time in Columbus is going to be faster than it was at the combine for sure. And honestly, like I don't really care. I think 4.5s, like low 4.5s, is fine if you're the kind of player that Carnell Tate is. Okay, we're going to wrap things up there on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Mary Kay mentioned she texted some folks earlier today. That's Football Insider, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. Our YouTube is Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. And just a reminder, like I always say, if you're on any social, go search Orange and Brown Talk. Give us a follow there. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.